my mind is made up.
Hey guys, this is Eric Kyle, publisher of Latitudes and Attitudes magazine.
And I'm David Levesque, editor of Latitudes and Attitudes, and welcome to Three Sheets, our podcast where we chill and chat with individuals making a difference in the cruising lifestyle.
Each episode, we'll dive into all things cruising related and bring you some of the most influential characters out there. So sit back, grab your favorite bottle, light them if you got them, and enjoy the adventure. Hey guys, Eric Collier, publisher of Latitudes and Attitudes magazine, and I got some special guests for you today on Three Sheets, the podcast. We're here with James, the Sailor Man. James, how are you today?
Great. How are you guys?
Oh, full of energy, brother. Just salt and vinegar the whole way around. We're joined with David Levesque, Three Sheets podcast. David, how are you, brother?
I'm doing well, my man, Eric. It is pretty exciting to have James, the Sailor Man, on because we've been following this dude for a while, and he wrote an article for us recently, so we're going to touch on that today. And I'm just impressed that, I mean, it's really cool because like it's tomorrow morning, it's Saturday morning. We're recording this on Friday afternoon. It's like we're talking to somebody in the future. This is so cool.
Yeah, me and Rhonda live in the future in Triteia. We're all future sailors, you know what I mean?
So tell us, James, where are you guys located at right now? And maybe give us just a little brief history of who you are, what you're doing.
So currently we're in Cairns in Australia. We're almost done with our cruise of Australia. I left Los Angeles in August of 2021. So 3 years, very close to the date that we're filming this. And I soloed to Hawaii and then Hawaii to French Polynesia, made my way through the South Pacific I went to American Samoa, Fiji, and then down to New Zealand and spent a year cruising New Zealand. Fell in love with a Kiwi when I was in New Zealand. And then I soloed the Tasman in February of this year. And Rhonda joined the boat full-time in Sydney in February.
I absolutely love Kiwis. And I mean, they got a nice soft flesh. They're a little hard to peel, but they're nice and they're a good source of some good vitamins and minerals. So
yes, soft feathers as well.
Good on you, James.
Yeah, and so and then we've just been cruising up the Australian coast since then, which it's a very big coast, it turns out.
So,
James, I want to point out that you're doing this on a 30-foot sailboat.
That's right.
So
1965 Alberg 30. So yeah, I found her in Los Angeles Harbor, which is like in a marina where they say is where boats go to die. She had a seized engine, no gear, hadn't left a slip in 6 years, and if they didn't sell her within a couple weeks, they were going to cut her up. I bought her for
best thinking, James, was let me buy this boat and take it around the world.
That's exactly it. It was like the Alberg 30 was in the top 3 of my choices. I was actually looking for a Triton, but because I didn't think I could afford a Alberg 30, and I found this one in like a sad state for $2,400. Handed the dude the cash. Actually, it was $2,500. I gave him the cash. He thought he was ripping me off, so he gave me $100 back. He's like, I feel bad. And then I just got to work, and made it happen.
What was the restoration time like? I'm sorry, David, I didn't mean to cut you off, but like when you say you got to work on a boat that's $2,400 and be able to put it into condition to sail it around the world or to where you're at in the world right now, what was that all about? What did you have to do?
Kind of everything. It was like a 4-year total refit, but I had her sailing within 2 months. And within 3 months, I was taking my first trip to Catalina Island. And then within 6 months, I was soloing Santa Cruz Island and the Channel Islands of California over the Christmas holiday from work. So I got her back into at least sailing. She had very little. Like when I did this solo trip around Santa Cruz Island, I spent a week anchoring, and it's very remote there. There's like no facilities. I had replaced the engine, and the electronics I had were like nav lights, and I had like one cabin light and one USB charger. And there was like nothing else on the boat, but I just like went for it. And it was like, I had a blast. I was like, this is what I want to do. Like it really kind of set the stage for me. I was like, I loved it. So that was kind of, and then from there, I would just do like huge projects. And then I would just cruise the boat around Southern California, do day sails and stuff for a month or two, and then get back into big gnarly projects.
Have you been a sailor prior to this whole thing? I mean, what was your sailing background?
I got turned on to sailing in 2014. So, and I bought Triteia in 2017. So I got totally addicted to sailing as we do in 2014 in the Orkney Isles of northern Scotland. And at that point on, I was like, forget everything else in my life. Like, I have to make sailing my life. And I started like volunteering for deliveries for ocean sailing, like yacht deliveries. Gained all my ocean sailing experience that way, and got on race teams, and just any way I could find my way into boats. That's what I did.
All right, let's back up real quick because you just said you bought you said Triteia?
Triteia.
Triteia. Okay, you got Triteia in California.
Mm-hmm.
You cut your teeth sailing in the islands of Scotland. Please connect the two dots for me.
So,
Because that's where everybody cuts their teeth. in
yeah,
sailing.
exactly. Well, and
Especially if
that's
you're from Southern California, you have to go to Scotland to cut your teeth to learn how to sail. Got
Makes
it.
perfect sense to me.
it is it's a funny thing. So I was like pursuing a career as a fine artist. So I was exhibiting all over the world and showing in galleries, and like I had just spent a month in Russia making a body of work and having exhibitions in Russia. And so I got offered this opportunity to be an artist in residence on a sailboat in the Orkney Isles of Scotland. So I did it. I'd done like 1 day sail before that, just kind of be like, oh, well, what's this like, I made a drawing machine. So it was like this wheeled platter inside like a box that had paper and a fixed pin. So as we sailed between islands, this thing would just move around and the boat would basically create drawings. So that's what I did for my time there. But what really happened was like I got on that boat and I was like, we were sailing between islands in the Orkney Islands, going to Neolithic sites of Neolithic man tombs, or there are sites, there's standing stones of Stoness that predate Stonehenge by 1,000 years. So, and these are peoples that vanished from the earth that we know very little about. So here we are sailing, using the elements to go to these ancient sites. And I was like, this is possible? Like, it literally changed everything for me. And like when I stepped off that boat, after we transited the Caledonian Canal, across Loch Ness and everything, I stepped off that boat and I was like, fuck an art career. Like, this is what I gotta do. Like, I can like it's like time travel. Like, I can go to these like totally wild places on a sailboat. And I was like, I don't care about anything else at this point, So, and that was it. That's what I made my focus from that point on.
Rhonda,
So
let me ask you a quick question. What's it like to live aboard with a complete lunatic?
I think I'm equally as loony.
Yeah.
So it probably works okay.
That's the only way it works.
No, that's great though. I mean, do you have a history sailing as well, Rhonda? Have you
I grew up in the water, and being in New Zealand, like you're like I see the water every single day. So the ocean was a huge part of our lives. We had a tiny little sailboat when I was wee, and so Dad used to take us out there, and then just grew up on buzz boats and things. And then as a teenager, I went sailing a bit, had partners with family with yachts, so had always sort of been in and around it, so it was always familiar. I don't get seasick at all, so
At all.
yeah, it's kind of just like yeah, quite a natural thing for a Kiwi, I suppose, to be on the water. Yeah. So
Kind of a perfect match. Where did you guys meet? Just out of curiosity. I know that you were in New Zealand, but tell us the story. How did you guys meet?
Well, James was up sailing around an area where I was living in there, and I actually didn't really follow him on YouTube or anything. I didn't realize how big he was either. But I started following his Instagram account because he was sailing around areas in which I was. So I reached out to him one time with the storm coming in about a website that I knew, which was basically people renting out their mooring balls for people on holiday and things like that. But I just figured that the storm was coming in, and I had used it up in the Bay of Islands before, and just was like reached out to him and sent him a link and just said, hey, you probably know about this, but this is available, to rent if you need it. And kind of he didn't know about it, and then we kind of just like casually started like talking and stuff, and then just things kind of progressed from there. James asked me if I wanted to come sailing over Christmas. I was going to be working through, and and went, flag it. Okay, I'll come for a week. And it ended up being like 16 days. I changed my flights back home, and yeah, it's kind of just,
And then like a month later, you moved aboard.
yeah, yeah.
Once I got to Sydney, yeah,
Ditched
because
my
that
life.
was all. We were cruising Marlborough Sounds together because I was going down there to be my last thing in New Zealand, and I was like, "Hey, do you want to come hang out on board and like for a week?"
I was very hesitant at first. I was
Yeah,
like,
makes
no, I
sense.
don't know about this. Like, yeah. And then, yeah, I was like, oh, well, I might as well go. Like,
Mhm.
I've always wanted to sail the Sounds. I'd done van life for 9 months on my own, just after like the big COVID kind of buzz, and had done van life around the Marlborough Sounds as well. So knew the area. I'd lived in the South Island as well for a bit. And yeah, just was like, you know what, I'll just go. Like, why not?
It's a
And
heck of a leap of faith. And
that was one of the
that's
things.
really cool.
One of the things for me is that she had done solo van life for 9 months, so I knew she was comfortable living in a small space with like almost no creature comforts. And for me, that was like, I was like, okay, this is someone who can like be chill.
I've also
with-
done like a bit of bike packing and stuff like that, so I'm pretty used to kind of roughing it. Like, grew up camping and all that kind of stuff. So it's, yeah, being in here, I can actually stand up. Couldn't stand in my van, and yeah, it's a cozy little space.
Can you imagine checking all the boxes on that dating app right there? It's like, okay, able to live in small spaces,
Yeah.
very little creature comforts, infrequent showers. You know,
Yeah. Well, that's the thing, right? Like being as like solo sailor, I didn't date for like at all for 2.5 years. Like, how do you date when you're constantly moving? And not really. If I had some big like flash 56-foot catamaran, there'd be a lot more guys like, hey, how's it going? But little 9-meter boat and like a dude that looks like a hobo, they're like, nah, I'm chill, I'm good.
James is like, they see me rolling with my 30-foot.
That's what we sing when the boat's rolling. We're like, they see us rolling.
Yeah, and the anchorage. Yeah.
That's awesome.
So what is the plan? You guys are currently in Northern Australia. Are you attached to the idea of cruising around the world, just spending more time in maybe Southeast Asia? Where are you going from here?
Circumnavigating. So for sure, like working the loop. Right now, as soon as we just got our MMSI number for our new AIS, so we're heading to Indonesia. We'll be in Indonesia for 3 months, and then be in Malaysia and Thailand for until like April, because we can't cross the Indian Ocean until around April. So we yeah, right now we're about 5 to 7 days from Thursday Island, where we'll clear out of Australia, and then push on up into like Eastern Indonesia, the Kai Islands, and then we're going to visit the Spice Islands for all their history, and then work our way through Indo. Yeah, and then Malaysia kind of will be where we chill out for a couple months because it's really affordable and it's in a good spot near to Thailand. So that's the goal for this year. This year will be like pretty big push because I left New Zealand in like January, and then pushing all the way to Malaysia. So that's a lot of miles covered. So yeah, that's this whole year's program is like Australia and Southeast Asia.
Well, it does say you're slowly circumnavigating. I looked at your socials, slowly circumnavigating. So you got a ways to go. You made it from California to Australia, New Zealand. So
that's pretty cool. The cool thing though is there's no rush to what you're doing. I mean,
hell no.
You're taking years at sea, meeting a beautiful young lady, cruising to exotic places and incredible ports on a 30-foot boat. Just sounds like, James, you're having the time of your life, and this is a pretty rewarding type deal for you.
Yeah, and it's like I've been fortunate enough that like my YouTube channel is my full-time job. So I know so many cruisers who they've either saved up and they can take 3 years off to go cruising, or they have rental properties and so they live, but a lot of people are on kind of a timeline. So for me, I can make my work anywhere I go. So that opens up the timeline for me. As long as I can make content that people are interested in seeing, that means that we can kind of cruise whenever and wherever we want. So that's been, I've been grateful that that sort of worked out.
So we talk about that a lot on these podcasts and also in the magazine, just about, the ability with, Starlink and all other sorts of connections to be able to still work if you are employed in other professions from a moving vessel, right? Or anywhere in the world you want to work from. I do know a lot of content creators who are making money off of the content they create. So your YouTube channel has over 140,000 followers, right? I mean, you are monetizing yourself just comfortably doing what you're doing with the content, right?
Oh, it's been my only job and my full-time job since 2021, since I left LA.
Awesome.
I write for various magazines, but we know that's like few and far in between. That's more like just put that those checks go straight to the credit card pay down. But yeah, so it's been, I mean, we live a pretty simple life, especially under anchor. It doesn't cost much.
No.
Other than the like when there's like big boat repairs or stuff like that, but
Hmm.
it's pretty affordable. We hardly ever stay in marinas.
Yeah, it's crazy when you think like how much money you haven't spent for a time as well when you're away from, like, if you're off the coast, for instance, like, or you're just hopping from anchor to anchor and you're not going ashore and spending money. It's like, whoa, I haven't spent any money for like 2 months, kind of, like it's a strange thing. It's like, whoa.
Yeah, it's totally doable, and especially if you keep it simple, it's manageable.
Well, you mentioned boat repairs. Okay, so you're on a 30-foot 1965. Okay, I've got a 75 Sabre 28.
Nice.
I know that boats cost money. All right, so I mean, how solid? I mean, we just interviewed Lynn Party recently, who you might be familiar with, Lynn, right? And she talked about just the simplicity of being able to go cruising, and we talk about this all the time. Lynn said you need a solid hull, a mast that'll stand up, good sails, right? And I mean, what's I would imagine you've done pretty much what you need to do to your boat to keep it sound and solid. But if you're in the middle of, South Pacific someplace, or you're hitting the Indian Ocean, there's really not a West Marine around or something like that. What do you do?
For sure. Well, you just do it. I mean, for me, all of my heroes sailed in the 50s and 60s and 70s. So, and they had no navigation other than a sextant. They had kerosene lamps. You know what I mean? So for me, I always, when things get hard or things break, I'm like, you know what? Like all my heroes did it with way less than I'm doing it. Like I have an iPad with GPS. It's like, so anytime like, things feel like, heavy, I'm like, you don't need much to actually do this. Like it's easier to do it with like everything working. But for instance, like I got to Fiji in what year was it? 2022, and my engine totally failed. Like I had slowly siphoned up water through the exhaust port between American Samoa and Fiji, and I cruised Fiji, and the engine slowly got worse and worse to where it wouldn't start. I got it running enough to get me outside the outer reefs of Fiji, and then it never ran again. And I sailed to New Zealand with no engine, sailed into the Bay of Islands, New Zealand, in a building gale with no engine, within a mile of the Q dock, dropped the anchor, and was like putting my dinghy on the hip when a Good Samaritan pulled up in like a beautiful vintage like launch. And he's like, "Hey, do you want a tow?" And I'm like, "Hell yeah." And so he towed me up the Q dock, but it's totally doable.
I love that you just mentioned that about a Samaritan, okay? Because this is another point that we talk about all the time with our magazine. I mean, cruisers are a community like no other I've ever encountered. Like
100%.
no other I have ever encountered. Seriously. And it is like, it doesn't matter where you come from, race, creed, religion, anything. You see a cruiser in need anywhere, you are going to help that person. And it doesn't matter. It's like, it's one unity, man. It's just amazing. So good on you. It happens, right?
Yeah, it's amazing. It's really a remarkable community. And like I made music for many years, put out tons of records and stuff. And we were talking about this recently. And then in the art world, and with those two things, like those are the main chapters of my life. Those other people in those communities are kind of in competition with one another. Where in the boating world, that's not necessarily the case. Like in the boating world, we all just everyone wants everyone to have like the best time, right? So, and like to be safe. So it's such a different community where it's like no one is trying to compete with each other. Everyone just wants to lift everybody up. It's cool.
I'm curious, James, as you talked a little bit about some of these crazy adventures like sailing from Fiji to New Zealand without an engine. And you have a YouTube channel with a lot of followers. What is like the craziest things that ever happened to you while you've been out there? Maybe that you recorded on your YouTube channel and shared with people and it just absolutely blew up. So talk to us about some of the extremes that you've encountered when you've been out there.
Well, yeah, the gnarliest I think is kind of well known about people who follow my channel and stuff is I lost all steering 1,000 miles from Hawaii when I was sailing from LA to Hawaii. I believe I hit a submerged sea container, and it broke. I have like a full keel boat with the rudder slung on the keel, but it broke the bronze rods inside my wooden rudder. So the rudder was still attached, but it was like I lost all steering. So here I was 1,000 miles from Hawaii, no way to steer the boat. I had like a vintage Sailomat wind vane, which was an auxiliary rudder, but that rudder was smaller than a hydro vane, so it wasn't powerful enough to carry enough sail. So like if I had motored 1,000 miles, that auxiliary rudder would have been fine, but obviously that's not an option, right? So I ended up on the third day of being adrift in the middle of the Pacific through my Iridium Go, I was texting with like 2 buddies of mine who are captains, and they talked me through on how to set up a drogue to steer with. And I happened to have a drogue. I had everything on board. So I rigged the spinnaker pole aft across the stern pulpit, and I ran control lines, and I had a drogue. And within 2 hours of having the drogue in the water, I was steering the boat and back on course for Hawaii. And so I steered for 18 more days, 1,000 miles with drogue.
Yeah, just your typical Wednesday.
Yeah.
All right, so that was the most challenging. Tell me about the most exciting thing outside of meeting Rhonda. Tell me the coolest thing has happened to you since you've been out there sailing.
Coolest. Ooh, that's a hard question. Actually, no one's ever asked me that question.
Can I offer an idea?
Oh, yeah.
Can I offer an idea?
Yeah, please do.
James, you know what? We got this magazine. You may have heard of it. It's called Latitudes and Attitudes.
That is hilarious.
There's the new issue.
Yeah.
There's an article in here.
Boom.
Look at that. That has got to be one of the most exciting things ever happened to you, right? A
Always
Trespasser's Guide to Exotic Resorts of the South Pacific. This is the best part. Tales of a casual criminal sailing in beautiful places. Call yourself a casual criminal? Is that the deal?
Oh, yeah, always. But you know what? I wrote that article specifically for you guys. It was like, I was like, because I write for Yachting World, I write for Cruising World, I write for all the big magazines as well. And so I was like, but you guys are like chill and hilarious. So I was like, okay, I can actually write like a funny article about criminal activity. So, and you know, and it was like, I was stoked when you guys like said, okay, yeah, we'll publish this article. I was like, hell yeah, because like I know there's no way that article would have come out in any of the other publications that I write.
I'll tell you what.
We're real world sailors around here. We're people that buy boats. He's got a boat out of the derelict yard. I bought a boat out of the derelict yard. That's how we got sailing. This is what we do. This is not your stuffy yacht club experience, which there's nothing wrong with that. It's just the vast majority of people like to go out there cruising. You're just your normal guy that lives down the block who gets the bug and just goes and eventually ends up into the cruising lifestyle. Not all of us can be as exceptional as what you guys have been doing, but a lot of us really wish we could try to. And that's your YouTube channel helps to inspire a lot of people. That's what the magazine does. It really helps to inspire a lot of people as well. So kudos for you guys. Oh, and by the way, you did mention that you earned some money from writing articles. I hope you were able to buy that 6-pack from the check that we sent you a couple weeks ago for that article. I know we don't pay a lot, but that's kind of how
you know, I bought a whole new set of sails with that check.
Yeah.
There you go. You know, I just we're gonna put you know, we're gonna let people see some of this article in this podcast, but you know, this was our charter issue that came out May, June 2024. And I love some of the stories in this article about you sneaking into some of these swanky yacht clubs. And, you know, there's this one photo of you. I love this photo. It's like you got this straw hat on, you got this long sleeve skeleton t-shirt on, you know, you're holding a coconut. I'm just like, if I saw you climbing over a wall or something at a yacht club, I'd be like, fuck yeah, man, you go,
Yeah.
buddy. You get there.
There's like one of the things I described in that, it all really happened too. I was like trying to sneak onto this resort to find internet access. So I was like, okay, well, it was a big fancy resort. It's like, you know, the sitting over the turquoise water and like, you know, so I was like, okay, my thought was if I go around back, there's got to be like a path to the lagoon, right? Where all the guests go out and look at the open ocean. I was like, there's got to be. So I dinghied up. I walked through like small shark infested waters out. I get around back. There's no path. I'm like, oh no. Now I'm like behind this resort. It's like just coral strewn and everything. I was like, okay, well, there's got to be a way. So I cruise up. I see the like caretakers things. I like kind of rush past it so they don't see me. I come around this courtyard and I stop and I'm like, oh no. I see like decorative lights on the trees and I look over and there's everyone's eating food just staring at me. And I was like, I'm just standing in like a fenced off courtyard where you're not supposed to be. And everyone's like just looking at me like I'm an idiot. They're like, what is happening? I just turned my GoPro at them to like and they all look away from the camera and I jumped over the fence and took off.
I love the one line in here says, my grand plan was to walk out behind the resort and enter from the ocean side as if I were a guest on a stroll. And
That's right.
Listen, I'm going to be honest with you. So Erik and I have experience with this. We were at Peter Island in the BVI's.
Oh no.
About 10 years ago. And, you know, here we come rolling up in this catamaran we were on charter with. And it was like Caddy Day in Caddyshack, the movie, right? It's like we show up and we just started drinking these cocktails. They had like cocktail stuff ready to go right there on the dock. And some little guy comes running along and he's like, no, those are for the guests. Those are for the guests. And, you know, we're just acting like we own the place. And, but there was like a plumbing problem, Erik, wasn't there, in the bathroom?
Yeah, that wasn't my fault, David. So the night before, we're at Willie T's, which is this old boat, and down in Norman Island, everybody knows Willie T's had a blast. The next night, we go into this Peter Island resort, and everybody's like wearing these jackets and ties, and just really, we didn't even last one drink. We're like looking at each other up at the bar, like we gotta go.
You know what? But that's the beautiful part of this whole community we're talking about, right? So it's like, you know, everybody's got a seat at the table in the cruising community, right? It doesn't matter, man. It doesn't matter. And I love that you wrote this article for us because it tells the tales, and I love that you call yourself a criminal. That's hysterical.
Yeah. Well, you know, call it like you see it.
James, I'm still wanting to get an answer to my question about the most awesome thing that's happened to you while you've been out there. I mean, outside of potentially walking into somebody's wedding in some exotic resort, what was really cool? What happened that was awesome?
You know what I think it was actually? I think sort of like the height of it for me so far was stepping off Triteia onto the Q dock in New Zealand after sailing there without an engine. New Zealand was like a huge milestone for me. I had made it so far. I guess it's a two-part thing, but reaching that Q dock where I was like, wow, you know, because up to that point, it was like the chaos that happened to Hawaii and then Hawaii to French Polynesia and then all across the South Pacific. It was almost like living in a novel. And it always felt like, you know, okay, well, am I going to be able to pull this off? And like getting to the quarantine dock in New Zealand was such like, I just felt like this, like, I was like I did it. Like I made it here, like on a little boat that I had fixed up myself, fixing it up paycheck to paycheck for so many years. Like I did it, you know? And then the second part would be sailing into Sydney Heads, into Sydney Harbor in February after crossing the Tasman solo. Sailing into the Heads, I was like, I have crossed the entire Pacific Ocean solo on a 30-foot boat. And it was just like, I was like, if you think about how many people climb Everest every year, and have like Sherpas carry all their stuff. And I don't know the number, but I don't think many people have done that on a small boat compared to how many people are out cruising.
Yeah.
And I was just like, it just felt amazing, and it was like terrible, actually. It was like 12 to 15 knots of headwind. I'm beating against a current. It's like 2 a.m. Brutal trying to get into the heads. But like as soon as I crossed into Sydney Harbor,
No comms for like 3-4 days.
I had lost my Iridium Go had gone down. So my whole team, I hadn't had comms for like 3 days. Like everybody, my tracker had just stopped. So everyone, no, my shore team had thought I just kind of vanished.
Yeah, that was spooky.
So yeah, to come into Sydney Heads, it was just like, I did it. Like I crossed the entire Pacific on a little boat. That was probably the height for me.
I love that story. One of our original podcasts was with the former publisher of Latitudes and Attitudes, Bob Bitchin. And Bob brought up something when we got to the point of, Bob, why do people cruise? Why do people go out there, risk their life and limb, go with no creature comforts, go in these small spaces just to go sailing around the world? What's the deal there? And he said that part of the reward of knowing that you did it is why people do it.
100% makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. And this is something, James, just going back to something we talked about earlier, like, one of your, your heroes from the 50s, 60s, 70s. Lynn Party is a legend to a lot of people. And, her and her husband, it was funny when we were interviewing Lynn and she was talking about, we're like, how many miles you got, Lynn? She's like, I'm about 215,000. She's like, which isn't really that much. And I'm like, yeah, Lynn Party just said 215,000 miles isn't that much. And they did most of that on boats without engines at all. That's just how
they had no engines. Their first boat was 24 feet and their second boat was 30 feet. So yeah.
And this is part of what Erik and I we talk about this almost in every single podcast, because Erik and I have been doing the boating industry for a long enough time that we've seen so many discussions about how do you get more people to get boating? How do you get more people to get into boating? And you have to remove that stigma that it costs a lot to actually do this. You have to remove that. And people just think, boat acronym, break out another 1,000, right? And it's you don't have to do it. You know what I mean? You're living proof of that. The guys at YCA, Logan, one of the guys that started YCA, Young Cruise Association, he got a 30-something odd boat off a scrap heap, fixed it up, started going sailing. There's a lot of great boats out there with great bones, ready to be loved, ready to be taken care of, fixed up and inspiring the next person, right?
I think so much of that is like YouTube as a medium has turned on so many young people to the fact that this is possible. And a lot of these young people haven't read about all the people that were cruising in the 60s and 70s and on small boats, right? So some people think they have to have a big flash boat, but the reality is YouTube has shown so many people that you can do it on almost nothing. If you're willing to be uncomfortable and just like be out there for the love of the adventure.
It's not so much being uncomfortable though. It's more of a simpler life too, like it's not so much, it's not overly uncomfortable, and the thing with bigger boats is that there's just so many more things that are going to go wrong. And it's going to cost you so much more as well.
Yeah, it's almost like you change your comfort level, right?
Yeah, for
it's
sure.
Like if you're living in a home and you're surrounded by curtains,
the laundry down the hallway,
couch, running water.
God.
You just change what your comfort level is. You change what makes you happy and what is acceptable to you in terms of comfort. So it's not really, like you said, Rhonda, it's not uncomfortable.
It's not uncomfortable. You just, you change. And you just have to look back. It's like, people were washing in rivers before, you know what I mean? Like it's just what you get used to, I suppose, or what you're willing to sacrifice to have this life, I think,
Well, I was washing in the river last night thinking about this.
There you go.
When I got done, I wanted to get back to James' point. This generation, and I have 3 daughters ranging from 15 to 20, and they're about experiences. They're not about ownership, whether it's a car or a home or whatever. They just want to experience things. And to your point, YouTube has allowed people to, especially the younger generation, to be able to acknowledge that they can have these experiences as well. And they don't have to be confined into this lifelong marriage or home ownership or whatever it is. They can go out and have great experiences.
100%.
You know, Rhonda, you're one of the there hasn't been, I mean, there's actually been several people we've talked to who reference van life, van
Oh,
life, you know,
Mhm.
and we've talked about this particular magazine, Latitudes and Attitudes. It is a cruising lifestyle magazine, but I mean, the magazine itself is you don't have to be on the water to enjoy a lifestyle like that. You know what I mean? You can live on a van, and there's so many people I know that just have RVs, have those little teardrop RVs that they, you know, that they trailer around and go from there, you know, and maybe we need to go ahead and start implementing some of that in the magazine pages. What do you think, Erik?
Sure. So, James, I'm really curious if you were to say something to your YouTube followers who are constantly looking to you for inspiration to follow this lifestyle. What would be the overall consensus of something that you would want to say, hey guys, this is my message to you?
I've probably said it 1,000 times, but the scale of your dream doesn't matter. All that matters is that you realize that life is incredibly short and that happiness and joy are more important than working yourself to death for someone else. So like, you know, even if it's just on the weekends and you have a trailer sailor, if you wake up under anchor on your little boat in a lake and you walk out and you're smiling and you're like, this is awesome, that's it. Like, you know, that's literally the most important thing, is to find some kind of peace and joy in whatever avenue, whatever you're chasing, find some happiness, whatever the scale. That's, to me, that's like the thing that I want everyone to like get their head around, is that life is impossibly short.
A great message, my friend. I appreciate that. Rhonda, what about yourself? If there was one thing that you would want to tell people that want to take a look at this potential lifestyle to live aboard a boat like this, and travel, what would you want to tell them? This is my message to you.
I just don't think that you should sit on the fence about things, you know, like I'm all for taking chances, you know, if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. But living with the unknowing of not taking that chance would be the worst thing ever. So, you know, if you've got an idea or however crazy it might be, like I'm really lucky because so many people just know what I'm like, and they're not, you know, I didn't get any flack for giving up my life and doing this with James. They were all for it, you know, everyone was really supportive. But people often do have people that are, you know, trying to temper the dream, or, you know, putting them down for trying to do something different. Just go for it. Go for it.
You know, and it sounds cliche sometimes, like, oh, don't wait for tomorrow, that kind of thing.
100%.
It is so true. I mean, you
Yeah.
can't wait. And it's like people think, oh, you know, I've got all this time in the world. No, you don't have all this time in the world. It goes by so damn quick.
Yeah.
It goes by so damn
If you
quick.
could get sick, you know, and things could be over in a couple of months, you know, and you could have had a couple of months doing something you really loved, you know.
Yeah. James, do you
So-
ever get back to, I know home is the boat now. Do you ever get back to original home? Is that California?
I went back to the States last year around this time. I went sailing with Andy Shell of 59 North we sailed from Newfoundland to Greenland to Iceland. So when he invited me to do that, I went back, and it was like coming up on New Zealand winter. Like New Zealand summer is brutal enough that I was like, okay, I put the boat in a marina and went back to LA. I did a talk at Patagonia in Los Angeles. And then I traveled around seeing people when I was back. So I don't have any plans on going back again until the circumnavigation's done. But yeah, so last year I went back and then went on to go sailing with Andy.
Do you have a timeline, James, on when you're gonna get back to LA?
I thought I did until I reached New Zealand and I decided to spend a year. And I was like, because I thought I was going to be in New Zealand like 4 or 5 months. And I was like, there's so much to see in New Zealand that I was like, what am I doing? Like, when am I going to be back here again with my boat? Like, what is stopping me from staying here for a year? Because you can't just like leave after like 6 months or something, right? You have to like sail with the seasons because of cyclone season. So I was like, okay, well, all I got to be able to do is make videos, so I can do that. So and there's so like New Zealand is like the greatest cruising ground I've ever seen in my life. Like the only thing challenging about New Zealand, really challenging, is the weather. But it's unmatched for cruising. It is stunningly beautiful, tons of anchorages. So I spent a year there. But before that, I thought I had a timeline. But then I was like, you know what? Like maybe we'll get to Malaysia and be like, hey, let's hang out in Malaysia for a year, or get to Africa and be like, I want to spend a year in Africa. So I don't now it's like, like they say, cruising plans are written in the sand at low tide, right? So
Well, being in New Zealand, I'm hoping that you got to visit Hobbiton.
I didn't actually. I didn't. No.
Sorry, we'll go back to visit.
Yeah.
Go check out Lord Elrond's castle, and I'm sure he'll give you a personal tour. I know Fred is waiting, and who's that Dark Lord dude? The evil eye. What was his name? Well, watch out for that guy. Watch out for that.
Mordor was the mountain, right?
Yeah, Mordor was the mountain. I think I heard about that in a Led Zeppelin song at one time, but I'm sorry, I'm going way off course. David, please ask a question.
Let me reel you back in, Erik. James, we'd like you to write again for us. We definitely would like you to write again. We love the criminal articles. We want to see more of that. And I appreciate very much. I have to be very honest. I appreciate very much that you understand the brand essence of Latitudes and Attitudes magazine and what it's about. And you mentioned chill and all that, and that's kind of what we're about, man. I mean, we want the stuff that pours off the pages of this magazine. We want the stuff that pours off of this to inspire people to do what you're doing right now. And I know you're an inspiration to people. Rhonda, what's it like hanging out with such greatness? I got to ask you that.
I really wasn't aware of the such greatness. But no, he's chill. He's chill.
I'm curious, is there any way that we could see some of your art or listen to some of your music, since it might have been a couple chapters ago, but have you shared any of that with some of your fans and followers on YouTube?
No, I keep like my past life and my current life very much divided, but there's tons. I can give you guys links and stuff. I wrote for the Huffington Post for quite a while, so there's tons of essays on there, and it really, you can kind of see this transition to where I started. I had always kind of been interested in like, everything. I'd made art installations about sirens, about siren songs and all kinds of stuff. So there long been like an interest in the sea and the mythology of the sea and stuff. So yeah, I can definitely share some links with that. But I've always really kept that separate, especially on YouTube and stuff. Like I've mentioned it in podcasts because people ask me how it happened.
Yeah.
So it just, there's like a kind of a followed thread, and with writing as well. I started a small run publishing company years ago. So I used to be a taxi driver in Los Angeles, and I kept like a weekly blog of like everything I experienced, the people I met in my cab and stuff. And I would drive nights in Hollywood and downtown LA and South Central. So I had some funny stories, and I published a book called American Idol, like cars idling. And then I published a buddy of mine, sent back emails. He spent 2 years. I dropped him off on the Mexican border of Mexico, and he hitchhiked, took buses all the way down to Tierra del Fuego, over 2 years. And he would send home these emails of these crazy adventures. He was like a tour guide on volcanoes. He drove like a speedboat in the jungles of Guatemala, all this crazy stuff. So halfway through, I told him, keep sending these emails and we'll publish it as like a paperback when you get done, So we published that, called Walk. And yeah, so I published a number of these little books, and this was like, I don't know, this was like early 2000s. So, and then I've written for like Juxtapose magazine and various others. So I did a lot of writing even before the sailing thing too. So
plenty of chapters in your life leading up to where you're at right now, my friend. I'm looking forward to seeing the completed novel when it's all done. If I'm around by then. Keep it going though. Keep it going. I absolutely love it. Guys, I want to thank you for your time today. It's been an absolute privilege and honor to be able to spend some time with you guys where you're at right now and helping us to get to know you better. And Latitudes and Attitudes, as David said, is really about helping to inspire people to go enjoy the cruising lifestyle, break down those barriers that so many people put up in front of them about cost, about experience, about all these different things that make them say no to doing what they really want to do. So I thank you guys for helping to break some of those down.
Thanks for having us. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
James the Sailor Man, kind of like Popeye the Sailor Man, just a lot more tattoos.
That's the reference.
And he's into kiwis, not spinach. Well, maybe he's into spinach, who knows? But he's into kiwis. So
Exactly.
we're good. Sorry, James. My dad joke game is like way up here. So
Yeah.
Well, again, guys,
Yeah,
thank
it
you
was-
so much. Enjoy all that you're doing. Please keep us up to date. And when David said that we definitely want some more editorial from you guys, some more content from you guys, feel free to write away. We might be able to get you that 12-pack next time instead of the 6-pack.
Nice.
Jesus. James, you got anything else for us before we leave?
Like I said earlier, if you're watching this, even if you're poor, you want to go sailing, make it happen. You can do it. You can do it with less. Just make it happen.
Amen to that.
My mind is made up. I'm gonna sail away. Latitudes and attitudes will help me find my way with my loving cup. A little salt and